Hello, and thank you for joining me here at Creative Photo Folk. I'm Hayley, and today we'll be taking a behind the scenes tour of my image, Vengeance. So the idea for this image was to create an HDR photo that I could then use in a tutorial inside one of my courses. And so there's this amazing gargoyle bridge. You'll spot the little gargoyles up here in one of the swimming holes in my town. And it's just someone's private residence, but they just have this incredible bridge. And so it's become obviously somewhat of an icon for people to visit and take photographs of. So the interesting part about this bridge, though, is that you can actually walk down this part. I think this is their driveway, but you can actually walk along here. So you can stand here and photograph, but then because there's no water over this side, you can see it turns back into forest. There is no reflection. So to get to this side is actually really difficult. And this turned out to be one of my most harrowing shoots I've ever done. And so I'd been researching how to get down to this particular side of the bridge. And I'd found someone online suggesting that if you parked about a K away, you could just walk into the creek and then follow the creek up to it. And I had my mother with me. She occasionally comes on my shoots because she is a little bit terrified that I might get murdered. And she's not the most mobile person, and she had decided to stay in the car. So I've walked down to this creek and I've started walking up it, but you couldn't walk in the water because it was way too slippery. And to walk on the banks was really precarious. There was no clear path. There's trees and roots everywhere. And not only that, there was bits of barbed wire everywhere. I'm not sure why, whether someone had put it there to stop people walking up this creek, even though it is public property. And it was really, really making me feel very unsafe. And so I found a place where I could actually scramble up the bank and walk back along the road to my car. So I did that. And when I got to my car, my mother wasn't in it. And so I am freaking out, screaming out her name, thinking, oh no, she's attempted to walk up this creek without me. And I had no phone service because this area is kind of in the middle of nowhere. And so I'm frantically trying to get phone service. And so I thought, what the hell am I going to do? Because she's now going to end up at the bridge and I'm not going to be there, and that's going to freak her right out. So I ended up running up the road right up to beside the bridge to see if I could actually scramble down a cliff. And it turns out you can. Like, it really wasn't that hard to get down. It was a little harder to get up, but to have gone to all the effort I'd gone to previously was absolutely not necessary. And I had intended to put on a costume and actually photograph myself on location, but I was just so freaked out by the whole experience. But I thought, I'm here anyway. I don't know where my mother is. I can't contact her. So I may as well just shoot the thing. So I set up my tripod in the water, and again, it was really, really slippery in this area. And I took HDR shots. And as you know, because you have to take 3 shots, and one of them is generally 30 seconds, and I wanted to take some variations, it still took quite a little while to shoot. But I did it as quick as I could, hoping that my mother would arrive at some stage. And, you know, because I had run up and down the street now twice and walked up half the creek, so I figured she couldn't have been too far behind me. So I was maybe there for about 10 minutes and she still hadn't arrived. And I thought, oh my God, what if she did what I did and turned around and went back to the car? So this whole thing was just a nightmare. So I packed on my gear, climbed back up the bank, ran back to the car and kept frantically trying to call her. And then I was frantically trying to call friends who actually did have some service, but because she didn't have service, I couldn't contact her. Anyway, she eventually did turn up back at the car. She had walked up to the bridge, not found me, and walked back again. And I suspect she was probably actually walking back when I was photographing it. So we would never have found each other. So that's a really fun backstory for this one. I'd like to say that all my shoots are lovely, but 9 times out of 10, they do have some crazy story that goes along with them. So let's dive into this image. So obviously, as I said, it was shot as HDR. So I initially combined the 3 shots in Lightroom to create this result. And then the first thing I did was made a copy of it, and then I just fixed the perspective because it was a little bit off. You could see how the bridge was sort of leaning, so I fixed that up. And then I did some toning to this background just to even it out. So you'll see that I have darkened down the trees, made it a little bluer. Then at the bottom here, I have cloned out the light spots and brought down the highlights on those so they're not so severe. And I've kind of made it so that the middle is brighter, so that's where your eye goes. Then I added the subject. So she was not photographed on location as I'd planned, but was photographed in my backyard. I just set up a little backdrop, and this is like an awning, and then this is outside. So it's actually the first time I shot here, and it was really good to be in the shade but have light hitting me from the back. So that has now become my favorite shooting position. Layer masked her out, and then I just evened up the tones of her. So I've lit the right side of her a little bit, darkened down the left side, and I really darkened down the bottom of the skirt to make it look like she was wet. And then I did a bit of cloning on her hair or her wig just to fix that bit there. Then I added a reflection. So I made a copy of her, turned it upside down, lowered the opacity, and now she's got a little reflection in the water. Because as you can see, the bridge has a reflection, so would she. Then I toned her a little more. Then I darkened down her skirt even more and brightened up the rest of her. Now, I had decided to call this image Vengeance because the story I had in my head was that there was this girl who'd returned home to this castle or whatever, and she'd returned because she was angry about something that happened in the past. And so the dress I have is from a secondhand store, but if you were to see the front, it is a little medieval, although they probably didn't have this kind of see-through chill stuff back in the day. And then I have an orange wig that I got off eBay, and I don't know, I guess I was thinking, Scotland, red hair. And so I wanted her to look a bit witchy, as if she'd come back to create some havoc. And I did that using a program called Infinite Texture. So basically, it is a program that is full of stock images that you can generate that you can use in your composites. So I found one of a sparkler that I put in her left hand, and then one of a blue kind of glowing thing that I put in her right hand. Then I found some flames to just build out what was happening in that hand and some blue sparkles for her right hand. Then I did a bit more toning. So as you can see, the whole image became a bit darker. Now, as if this image was not harrowing enough to create, I had finished the edit on this. I was so happy with it. I'd output a JPEG to share on social media, but I accidentally saved the file in a previous state. I can't even remember. But I lost all of the toning, all of the work I'd done to this, and I basically had to rebuild the thing again. And for months, I just put this image aside because I couldn't bring myself to redo all the work, but I eventually did. And I never got it quite to the initial state I was happy with, but yeah, these things happen, and it's not a mistake you like to make when you lose all the work you've done. It's not the first time, but thankfully it hasn't happened too many times either. So yeah, you may look at this image and find it quite peaceful. For me, it's, quite harrowing. The memories aren't great with this one. So that toning is primarily bringing in some blues. It's darkening down the edges. There's quite a lot of layers in here, so I won't go through them all. Then I added a texture and darkened down the sky some more because I found this really distracting. Like my eye was going to that little section of bare trees. Then I took out some hue and saturation. I thought she was a little too red. And then I added some leaves. So these are falling leaves. They look like this initially. And so I blurred them right up so that they could be close to camera and darkened them down and made them green so they fit in. So I wanted it to look like there were leaves swirling around her because she's obviously magical. Then I added another set, a smaller set that were a bit closer to her. They would look like that. And then I just brightened them up evenly and again made them green. Then I added another texture that brings a bit more light just to where I wanted the eye to go. And then one that created a kind of brownie vignette. Again, I did a ton more toning, which as you can see just makes the bottom more yellow and richer. Then some more. So this one does quite a lot. It really brings up the brightness in this area, makes it look a little more magical and draws the eye to the center of the image. Change the color to make it a bit more magenta in the center. Brightened up her arms because I figured if she's got, flamey things, then she would be quite bright. Created even more of a vignette, I believe, brightened her up. And really, I am just now directing where I want the eye to go, and then that is the final layer. So this is the final image, which is as close as I could get it to the one that I actually really liked. And so that is how Vengeance was created. So I hope you've enjoyed following along with my harrowing adventures. If you'd like to learn how to create artworks of your own, check out my courses in the links below. Otherwise, I'll see you again next week. Bye.